Louisiana Beer Reviews Special Edition Stroh's Classic Revisited. Now this is a bottle that was replaced recently. They went back to the old design because this new modern Stroh's design was not too popular, I don't think. This beer was sent to me by Dr. Dave in Ohio. Thank you, Dr. Dave. I appreciate it. So Stroh's Classic, since 1850, lager, 4.5% alcohol. It says on the bottle, the legal disclosure, lager. The Stroh Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Yeah, sure. It's really Miller Brewing in Milwaukee. But when I first started drinking beer in February '96, Stroh's was still an independent company, and I used to get a lot of their beers. And then they got bought out by Pabst in 1999, and Pabst shut down all their breweries. Shut down the Detroit brewery, shut down the brewery in Minnesota. Bought this can in Minnesota. All right. Brewed fresh brewed here. The Stroh Brewery Company, St. Paul, Minnesota. Yeah. Bought this can up there in Detroit, something like that. But this is after they started brewing in Milwaukee, after the buyout. Stroh's, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, yeah. Oh, I guess I bought this around 2002 when I was in Detroit or something like that. This old can I bought at a collector show, whatever. A flea market, actually. Bohemian style beer. Oh, yes. America's only fire brewed beer. Well, they stopped doing fire brewing in the 1970s because I guess they realized it was an expensive process. And it didn't really make the beer that much better. Okay, the unique and pleasing flavor of Stroh's is a result of the famous fire brewing process used exclusively by us in the United States, but they didn't make that claim. This is an aluminum can. They didn't make that claim, like after the 80s. All right, so thank you, Dr. Dave. We cannot get this in Louisiana. My uncle says that he remembers it in the 80s in Louisiana, but it probably didn't show up here after, like, say, 1991, something like that. Yeah, it's a typical American adjunct lager. It's straw. The appearance is straw with it'd be a thicker head, I think, and a narrower brim glass. But so this is the last of this label's a little chipped up, so I don't know if I'll save it. I might. I gotta think about it. All right. If you get on the website, they just say Stroh's beer. Oh, it's so good. It's a classic, so forth. And then they sell a bunch of T-shirts and caps and pullovers, stuff like that. Traditionally brewed with the finest hops, pure water, and barley malt. Union made. Consistently superior in quality for more than 200 years. $18.50. It says since 1775. Well, that's kind of not really right, because it was the Stroh family from Germany in the old Reich, and they moved to the United States, and then they started brewing over here in 1850. Okay, but they had been brewing in Germany since, they say, 1775. Okay, so but they started using adjuncts over here. They didn't have to be bound. They weren't bound by the Reinheitsgebot. They tried to go national in the 80s, but it didn't really work. They did big TV ads and all, but it just didn't work out. They were popular in the Great Lakes states. Yeah, it smells like white bread crust, a little bit of honey. They may be using some kind of honey malt. Yeah, all right, cheers with the taste. I was going to tell you about the date, but it's smudged off. The paint got smudged off, so there's nothing to tell you. I don't know how old it is. Tastes like it might be a little long in the tooth. But not rancid or, bad or anything. Prickly carbonation. So the carbonation didn't really fade too much. Crisp finish. Sweetness, 2 out of 5 sugar cubes. Bitterness, 1 out of 5 hop cones. Okay. Stroh's. Did it stand out from Old Milwaukee? Or Gerbil? That's an old beer they used to make. Gerbil, that's gone. That was one of the ones Stroh's had bought. Or did it stand out from Colt 45 lager? They used to make a Colt 45 lager, not just a malt liquor. Or Miller High Life, or Rolling Rock, or Pabst Blue Ribbon, or Olympia, or around Louisiana, Dixie, or in Texas, Pearl, and Lone Star. Yeah, it didn't really, or the Yingling Premium, it didn't really stand out from those. So it was nothing, when they went national, it was nothing to really make people get excited about it. I mean, it had a different label and all, but it was just like, oh, well, this is kind of like the rest. And they didn't have the money to really mass market it. I mean, they did run a lot of ad campaigns. I remember the Stroh's commercials, and they had Stroh Light, but just ultimately did not work. And then they had saddled themselves with a bunch of debt from their purchase of Schlitz Brewing in 1982, which was actually a bigger company than Stroh's, but Schlitz was struggling with some labor problems and internal problems, and Stroh's thought, well, if we buy Schlitz, we can borrow all this money, be like a leverage buyout. We buy all this money, borrow all this money, and we can take over like the third largest brewing company in the United States. But it was a company that had been declining for 10 years, so I don't know what they were thinking. But anyway, or at least 8 years. So they did it, and it didn't help. And then the debt load really sort of crippled them in a way. Like they had trouble paying the note. You know what I mean? The mortgage. So, and Pabst was a company that had historically, since the 50s, cruised around looking for weak brewing companies to gobble up. They had bought up the Blatz in the late 50s. That was the beginning, and then they just kept buying people up and then cutting all the costs, laying a lot of people off, and shut down breweries left and right. So they put the eye on Stroh's. Now Stroh's bought Heilemann Brewing, which was like the sixth largest, and fifth or sixth in 96. But then they borrow more money for them, and then that didn't really bring in a whole lot of. It was just like another struggling company. So Pabst finally made them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they sold out to them in 1999. And so Pabst didn't struggle to advertise because they don't do it. they don't advertise, So they just did their typical thing: shut down all the breweries, fired everybody, And they just wanted the brand rights and the recipe, right to the recipe, the trademarks and the brands, and they just did their typical thing. And then, it wasn't long after that, Pabst shut down all their breweries. I think the last one was 22 years ago, shut down Pearl Brewing in San Antonio. So they just found it was cheaper to pay their competitor to brew their beer, which we know that kind of brought Pabst Brewing Company under the thumb of Miller Brewing. But they didn't care, they just didn't care as long as they were making money. They were turning a profit. Apparently they are. So Stroh's, they tried this new label and spurred the sales. That probably hurt the sales, so they went back to this late last year, or sometime last year. Phased it in. Yeah, so Stroh's fine. Yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I never thought there was anything wrong with it when I first bought it back in the 90s. But I didn't think there was anything that fantastic about it. You understand? It was just like all the others. They're all nice. I say the American adjunct lagers are nice. But then you have this replication. It's kind of like that in the craft beer world today, like, look at this hazy IPA. It's juicy, it's dank, and it's like, oh yeah, I tasted that last week. It was from Indiana. Oh, I tasted that last week. That was from California. Oh, that was from Florida. And it's like, it's so repetitive, and now you're seeing that people are getting turned off by the IPA thing. The hazy IPA, the juicy IPAs, they're just saying, oh Lord, I can't stand it. Drink another one of those. And plus, those are a bolder flavor, a higher alcohol, higher bitterness, compared to this, and so then it becomes more challenging to tolerate it. With the American adjunct lagers, there's no challenge to it. If they all taste the same, okay, or generally the same, but you could just drink them. They're so drinkable. You just say, let me have one. I'm gonna drink a beer. I'll buy a 30-pack of Milwaukee's Best Light. I mean, you just drink it. It's not like a big project every time you pop a can open. So anyway, yeah, I miss Schaefer. Schaefer we used to get here. Oh man, when I first started my beer drinking project in February 1996, Schaefer was my mainstay because I could get a whole 24-pack, the suitcase, for $7.98. Schlitz too, $7.98, and they called it the Weekender. It's called the Weekender, and I would buy it. I mean, I wouldn't drink it in the weekend, but 12 packs was $3.99. And I mean, you could just go to town with Schaefer. It's so pleasant to drink, so enjoyable. And inexplicably it was pulled. 1999, 2000, never saw it again. And then we kept getting the Schaefer Light till around 2017. But it was probably some Pabst shenanigans, They just decided, let's pull Schaefer from all the markets. It's too big of a seller. Some harebrained idea. Oh, people buy it too much. We'll get them to buy Schlitz. Oh yeah, that really didn't work out. We can still get Schlitz 12 packs around here, but suitcases, I don't think so. Who can figure out Pabst? I read a long article about Stroh's, and they said that their ownership was family owners. It was a family-owned company, but they said it was getting really wrecked in the 80s and 90s because this is what I read. I'm not saying this. I'm saying this is what I read. They said all the family members had like a real serious problem, and they were doing more of that than than run. It was just like a mess. It was Yeah, kind of a predictable outcome type of thing. Sort of like with Anheuser-Busch when you turn the company over to somebody that can't stay out of trouble with drugs and alcohol, you know, so then the buyout happens. I could show you, since this video is basically a double down on Stroh's, I'll show you something. Yeah, so back in my early beer drinking days, beer project more than drink, I used to basically buy Stroh's products because they were really inexpensive and they always had the best, at least as good as everybody else's flavor. So I wrote a letter to Stroh's back when you used to have to write letters, you know. And I was like, can you send me information on your beers because they're really good? And so they sent me this big booklet about 2 weeks later. And this had a personalized letter. They sent me a business card from Lacey Alexis Logan, Senior Director, Corporate Communications and Public Relations of Stroh's, Detroit, Michigan. And so they had all these articles, these magazine articles they sent me from Beverage World, Stroh's New Style. And it was funny that they sent me these because if you read the articles, which I read all of them front to back, Fuel for the Fire, about how Stroh's was trying to make it in the 90s, Beverage World, Stroh and Behold, Modern Brewery Age, Annual Computer Update, an interview with Bill Henry of Stroh. He was the guy that they appointed to try to turn it around. He had a bad job. But a lot of these articles were saying, you know, Stroh's is telling us all this positive stuff, but we're not seeing it in the sales, you know. So it's kind of a depressing type of thing to read. And then the guy, the CEO, was saying, oh no, I think it'll be all right, you know, and just really wasn't. But just all about their product line. And it says, Stroh's has rushed the ice segment like a bull in a malt liquor shop. This is a great article. Stroh has rushed the ice segment like a bull in a malt liquor shop. And so they were showing the old original Schlitz Bull Ice. Basically the first high gravity ice beer, like 8.2. But you'd love to have those bottles. And then they were trying everything, like flavored malt beverages, like white moose, something icer, Clash, kind of like a Zima thing. But I don't think anything was working. So then, there's more articles. Impact Magazine. Stroh's acquisition of Heilemann. A mid-tier player gains critical mass. But I guess it helped them in a way because then they were able to sell all these brands to Pabst and get from underneath all that debt load, you know. But then there was the brochure, Brewing Today's Great Beers. And they tried doing all kind of craft beers, Augsburger, Doppelbock, Weisse, Oktoberfest beer, Rot, Dark, Bock, Golden. They had bought Primo beer of Hawaii, White Mountain Icer, yeah, those icers, which we call flavor malt beverages, Red River, North Dakota Reserve, Red Beer. I'm sure those were very nice craft style beers, but I don't know if they made any money with the, and they showed me all of their, they show you all of their lineup. And they had like a Michelob version Stroh's Signature, which is like a super premium Stroh's. But we used to get only a few of their things down here. In Louisiana, we used to get Schaefer Light. Love to have that 12-ounce bottle of Schaefer. Never heard of Goebel beer. I mean, I heard of it. I'm looking at it, but I never saw it. Goebel regular beer. Signature Stroh. Sure was very nice. Old Milwaukee Ice. Schlitz Ice Light. Remember Milwaukee? Y'all remember Miller Lite Ice? Stroh's Light, Old Milwaukee, Schlitz Light. I used to buy Schlitz Light for people. They didn't like it because, you know, it wasn't Bud Light, but it probably tasted better than Bud Light. Schlitz, Genuine Draft, Peels Light, Old Milwaukee NA. We can still get that. Stroh's, Schlitz Ice, Silver Thunder Malt Liver, Silver Thunder Malt Liquor, which I did buy in New York City once. 2010. Old Milwaukee Genuine Draft, Schlitz Malt Liquor, Bull Ice, Old Milwaukee Light Schaefer Ice, that didn't last. Schlitz, that's still around. Red Bull, Schlitz Red Bull, yeah, it's still around, but try finding it. Peels, that's gone. Stroh's Light, yeah, so that's a fascinating thing. Then he sent me all these letters, all these documents about their portfolio and the buyout and their history, and we have this brewing plant, and we have this brewery, and this malting facility, and you know. So they sent the best. But Miller did send me a nice thing too. I can't say they didn't. And Anheuser-Busch did too, and Coors did. So back in those days, they would send you stuff. You know, you could write to them, and they'd send you stuff. Pabst sent me a T-shirt, cap, bumper stickers. They were like, "You really like our beer?" I was like, "Yeah." "Oh, yeah." Okay. Score. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's fine. No problem, man. No problem. It's right up there with the other American adjunct lagers. They're all kind of like around an A-. They're like good, even excellent, but just so. But you're not paying, you know, a fortune for them. Well, maybe with inflation these days, you're paying a fortune for everything. But you know, I mean. So anyway, yeah, I'll score it. Save a little bit for a photo. Yeah, I'll go with 90. 90 out of 100. A-. Nothing to chase down. But if you're a can collector, bottle collector, yeah, I guess it is something to chase down. And I'm going to end this review, this double down. Stroh's beer, double down. By saying, y'all go to. Can't go to the brewery. Y'all go to a grocery store and buy some Stroh's beer.